Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. On day 6 of the government shutdown, another vote on the Senate floor. Republican leaders say only Senate Democrats can reopen the government. The European Union wants to get involved in President Trump's peace plan for Gaza. And Germany's foreign minister says he thinks the first phase of the plan can be implemented as soon as this week. The Supreme Court tosses out multiple cases on the first day of its new term, what it means for gun rights and more. A federal judge blocks President Trump from sending out-of-state National Guard troops to Portland. Meanwhile, Homeland Security warns of organized threats and ramps up recruiting. Paramount acquires the Free Press for $150 million. The organization's founder, Barry Weiss, will become the editor-in-chief of Paramount's CBS News.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is October 6th. I'm Stephanie Cox. The Supreme Court is kicking off its new 9-month term today. The justices have turned away multiple cases already. The High Court declined to hear Missouri's bid to revive a law intended to prevent enforcement of several federal gun laws in the state. The law from 2021 was backed by Republicans and declared that certain federal gun restrictions violate the Second Amendment. The Biden Justice Department challenged the law and it was blocked in 2023. The Trump Justice Department urged the Supreme Court to decline to hear the case, although it no longer wants to fully bar its enforcement. In a separate case, the Supreme Court declined to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's bid to overturn her conviction in the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case. The justices also tossed out other appeals by Russia's largest bank, Europe's largest software maker, as well as Live Nation. And the latest anti-ICE protests in Portland and Chicago. A federal judge in Oregon yesterday blocked a move by President Trump to deploy members of the California National Guard or any other state's National Guard to the state. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the story.
The judge's ruling follows an earlier decision in which a judge temporarily blocked President Trump from deploying Oregon's own National Guard troops to Portland.
What was unlawful yesterday is unlawful today. What was unlawful with the Oregon National Guard is unlawful with the California National Guard.
Attorney General Dan Rayfield says Oregon will not participate in what he calls an attempt to normalize military use in American cities.
All of us care about public safety, but you do that by working in partnership, and you do that by working in collaboration. And we do not use our United States military as a tool in political theater.
Federal Judge Karen J. Immergut temporarily blocked the administration from deploying National Guard troops to Portland. Immergut was appointed by Trump during his first term.
I wasn't served well by the people that pick judges, I can tell you.
A Pentagon spokesperson said roughly 200 California National Guard members from Los Angeles were being reassigned to Portland. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek said about 100 had arrived Saturday, with another 100 en route.
There's no need for military intervention in Oregon. There's no insurrection in Portland. There's no threat to national security.
California Governor Gavin Newsom opposed the deployment of his state's troops to Oregon, calling it a breathtaking abuse of law and power.
Trump is politicizing our military to police our communities. He's specifically targeting cities that lean Democratic or have leaders and residents who dare to speak out against his outrageous abuses of power.
The 300 members of California's National Guard had already been federalized in response to protests in Los Angeles against ICE agents. Portland's ICE building has been the scene of nightly protests, and Trump described Portland as a war zone rife with crimes and unrest.
Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place. It's Antifa.
Trump also called Chicago a war zone. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said Sunday that President Trump is ordering the deployment of 400 Texas National Guard members to Illinois, Oregon, and other states amid federal immigration operations. Pritzker said no officials from the federal government called him directly to discuss or coordinate the deployment. He said it goes against the wishes of state officials. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says Pritzker is turning over his state to what she called violent illegal aliens and actively working against law enforcement in support of lawless anarchists, speaking on Fox News.
We will use President Trump's methods and his abilities to deploy a whole-of-government approach, which means the Department of War will come in and help provide that security.
Noem says what she calls the violent riots are not about free speech.
Intelligence indicates that these people are organized. They're getting more and more people on their team as far as attacking officers, and they're making plans to ambush them and to kill them. We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them.
Meanwhile, Homeland Security released a job recruitment video encouraging people to become Homeland Defenders, investigative analysts, and immigration services assistants. Up to $50,000 signing bonuses are being offered. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Illinois filed a lawsuit today against the Trump administration over National Guard deployment in Chicago. The lawsuit argues that Washington has no legal right to interfere in Illinois' law enforcement. It says Republican Americans shouldn't live under the threat of U.S. military occupation, especially not because a city or state has, quote, fallen out of a president's favor. The filing says the president's power to use the military inside the country is strictly limited. This is a developing story, and we will be keeping you updated. And President Trump says his Gaza peace deal is progressing quickly. Germany's foreign minister agrees. He says he's confident the first phase to halt the war in Gaza can be achieved this week.
Wir begrüßen, dass Israel diesem Plan zugestimmt hat.
We welcome that Israel accepted the deal. Now it's Hamas's turn. And Israel has the responsibility to make sure the transition between the various phases of the plan is successful. We need the ceasefire for Gaza as soon as possible so that hostages can be released.
Geiseln freikommen.
The first phase aims at a ceasefire as well as the release of hostages and prisoners. It also includes restraint in the military conflict and making sure supplies will be shipped to Gaza. According to the German foreign minister, those points can be achieved this week, but he adds that he thinks the next phases of the deal would need more time. And the European Union also wants to get involved in the peace process. Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, reportedly weighed in on the situation today, according to agency France Press. Kallas says the EU is seeking a role in Trump's transitional authority in Gaza. The president plans to set up a so-called Board of Peace. Kallas told reporters that the EU should be part of that board. Here's more on the ongoing peace efforts.
Speaking to reporters outside the White House Sunday, President Trump told reporters he thinks a deal is progressing quickly.
We had some very good meetings. The countries of the world, a lot of the countries surrounding Israel, frankly, Muslim, Arab, and many others have had great meetings with Hamas, and it looks like it's working.
In a text message to CNN's Jake Tapper Sunday, Trump warned Hamas faces destruction if it refuses to cede control of Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his government has accepted Trump's peace plan and that now the responsibility lies with Hamas.
This plan consists of two parts. The first part is releasing all the hostages. Israel makes a tactical withdrawal, stays in Gaza. And then the second part is meant to demilitarize Gaza and disarm Hamas. That will be negotiated. Of course, I can't tell you if Hamas will agree to it. I think that it's possible. I hope it'll happen, but I can't guarantee that it'll happen.
Speaking in Jerusalem Sunday, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said a deal may be closer than ever.
I hope that we are the closest to a hostage deal since the deal in January. And I want to thank President Donald Trump for all his efforts with regard to this huge mission of bringing back our hostages back home. We are doing everything we can to bring our hostages back.
Sa'ar said Israel is ready to begin the first phase of Trump's plan immediately, focused on releasing the remaining hostages, both dead and alive, in Gaza. Outside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem and across Tel Aviv, Israelis gathered Sunday to pray for their release.
It has been more than 2 years that our brothers and sisters our captives in Gaza. When we've heard the news from President Trump on Friday evening, we were very emotional and excited about the potential upcoming release of all of our brothers and sisters from captivity in Gaza.
And solidarity spread beyond Israel's borders. In Athens, Greece, people gathered outside the Israeli embassy, waving flags and singing Israel's national anthem to mark 2 years since the Hamas attack that started the war.
Today there is an anniversary of the 2 years of the terrorist attacks in Israel of 7th of October, where I personally lost some friends, and there are still hostages in Gaza since that day. I hope with the new deal, the hostages to come back and celebrate at last peace in the Middle East.
Under Trump's proposal, Hamas would release the remaining 48 hostages, surrender power, and disarm. In return, Israel would halt its offensive and withdraw from much of Gaza, release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and allow an influx of humanitarian aid. Trump says he's pushing for results within days, warning that time is of the essence, or, quote, massive bloodshed will follow. Discussions about the first phase of the ceasefire plan are expected to wrap up by the week's end.
Up ahead, we'll get some business and investor perspectives on the economy, jobs, and what's next as we wade day 6 of the U.S. government shutdown. Right after this. Welcome back. Republican leaders in Congress once again urging Senate Democrats to approve the continuing resolution. They're calling on Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer to stop playing what they're calling political games.
The ball is in the court of the Senate Democrats. There's only a handful of people in the country who can solve this problem. There's 47 Democrats. We don't have enough Republican votes to fix this because it takes 60 votes in the Senate to break this impasse, to open the government. There's only 53 Republicans in the Senate. We need some Democrats to be thoughtful and responsible and do the right thing. Because why? Because real people are being hurt in all these political games.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said Schumer's rejecting the continuing resolution because the far left wing in the Democratic Party wants Schumer to show a fight against President Trump. Johnson said this is why Schumer created a distraction by picking a fight on health care. The House Speaker called on Senate Democrats to debate about health care policies with Republicans after reopening the government first. This afternoon at around 5:30 p.m. Eastern, the Senate will take another vote on the continuing resolution. The White House said federal layoffs could begin soon if negotiations go nowhere. And joining us now to discuss the government shutdown is Javier Palomares, founder and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Business Council, and Rod D. Martin, founder and CEO of Martin Capital. Good to have you both with us today. Javier, let's begin with you. Are businesses feeling the shutdown yet?
Absolutely. You know, the panic is widespread. You know, you're looking at Republicans want a clean CR with no changes to the current funding. Meantime, Democrats are asking to extend the healthcare tax credits. You know, shutdowns are impactful no matter how you look at them. And as of now, it looks like both sides are blaming each other. Now, the past shutdowns, one lasted, I believe, 3 hours, and one shutdown lasted 31 days. But with neither side budging, and I've spoken to members on both sides of the aisle, and nobody's budging. It's hard to tell where this one's going to go. So we're very worried from a business perspective.
And not only that, but it looks like, Rod, we may be seeing layoffs as well from the federal government. We're also looking at forecasts for cutting spending. So just in terms of those two aspects, what impact could that have on the economy, short and long term, Rod?
Yes, that's exactly where this is going if the minority party in both houses doesn't act reasonably. Where we are, as was just stated, is a clean continuing resolution. We're not asking for any policy changes. We're not trying to ram anything down the Democrats' throats. We're just trying to buy a few weeks to be able to negotiate these bills through regular order. The law requires that we pass 13 appropriations bills on specific subject matter each every year. And we haven't done that in decades. So Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune are trying to do that. They're just asking for a little more time to get there. Meanwhile, the Democrats are trying to ram their policy positions down our throats, even though they're in the minority. And those are crazy positions. The president has done a great job of showing, this is $1 trillion of borrowed money they're asking for to give welfare to illegal aliens. That is absurd. And what that means is that in the long run, the grandchildren of legal immigrants are going to have to pay for it. It's just crazy.
Now, Javier, on this point of the differing accounts of the cause, how do your constituents, Hispanic business people here in the U.S., see the conflict and the cause?
It runs the gamut. Certainly, as business people, we're all about a balanced budget. Certainly, we're all about keeping the government open. There's no question. On the other hand, we're hearing from other members and some of my constituents that the continuing healthcare credits are incredibly important. Some 22 million families are at risk of having their healthcare costs go up by hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. So it's a legitimate concern. What we're hoping for at the United States Hispanic Business Council is, look, one step at a time. Let's get the CR done. Let's fund the government. Let's get back up into business and then take on the tax credits. But again, the fear amongst Democrats is that if we give you this, then you're not going to deliver on the tax credits. And at that point, the one card we had has been taken. At the end of the day, the Republicans will still need 7 Democrats to vote with them to get this thing done. So whatever happens, it's time for some diplomacy, for some candid conversation, some give and some take from both sides of the aisle. Look, we're not politicians. We're the ones that keep the lights on. We're the ones that create the jobs. We're the one that pays the taxes. We don't get paid for political opinion. We get stuff done, and we need both of these parties for both ends of the political spectrum to come together, find a solution, and move forward. That's why we put them in office.
Now, Rod, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and others are warning that the shutdown could impact GDP. How could that impact working America?
Well, it's bad for everybody. We shouldn't be shutting down the government, especially when we can continue it in exactly the way that Congress already authorized previously, and just buy a little time to talk about these things. And we're talking about these ACA credits. Those things need to be discussed. We need to have a reasonable discussion about that, and we can do that in regular order. We can't do it at the point of a gun. So the GDP that is really going to be affected by this is if Chuck Schumer wants to continue the shutdown unreasonably, what's going to happen is the president and Kevin Hassett and Russ Vought are going to start laying off huge numbers of federal workers. We're going to get rid of them because, frankly, a lot of them need to go. And if they want it done this way, fine, we'll do it this way. It would be better to do this through legislation, but we can do it this way. The president has the authority to determine who is essential and who is not. So the GDP effect is going to be harshest in Northern Virginia. And Virginia's 2 Democrat senators need to figure out a way to come to a reasonable position so that we can have those extra weeks for debate and do this in good order instead of doing it single party. The president may not be able to end the shutdown, but he has a very big hammer.
All right, taking a step back now from laborers to the business perspective, Javier, in the case of a prolonged shutdown, what do you advise businesses to do to manage and adapt?
For businesses as usual, small businesses, we're left holding the bag. We don't get a say in this. What we are advising all of our members is, be very careful with your spending. It's a compounded effect on the small business community. Keep in mind, tariffs are top of mind as well. That has impacted our ability to purchase inventories. You've got holiday season coming. We don't have the purchasing power or the muscle that some of the huge retailers do. So we can't get any kind of discounts on inventory. We can't even pre-purchase inventory in many cases. And so we're watching that very carefully. You've got supply chain challenges that follow on the heels of that. And so for us, this is very serious. And it may mean that some of our businesses will have to shutter and or at a minimum lay people off. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to take 5 people to sit down and figure this out. It's going to take Schumer, Jeffries, Thune, Johnson, and the president to sit down, hammer this thing out on behalf of the American people and certainly on behalf of the American economy. It's a difficult issue. I'll give you that, but they're there to do difficult things.
Now, Rod, taking another tack, as an investment advisor, how do you suggest people with substantial assets and those with fewer resources prepare for the unknown in the economy at this time?
Well, I think everything Javier just said is correct, and we do have some real and meaningful problems. On the other hand, the longest shutdown in American history was 35 days. So my guess is we get to a resolution in a reasonable amount of time. I don't think people need to panic. I do think they need to take reasonable precautions. From an investment perspective, once this is done, I expect a boom all through this next year. We are in a supply side boom. We're seeing tremendous investment in manufacturing from inside the United States and from overseas. We're seeing tremendously positive things. Employment is a lagging indicator on all of that. We're certainly not seeing the inflation that was predicted, certainly not stagflation that some were predicting. I think we're in a bull market going forward once we get past this short-term disruption.
And lastly, Javier, as an advocacy group, what's the U.S. Hispanic Business Council's message to lawmakers? I've heard you urging bipartisan discussion here. If you can dig a little deeper on that and let us know what you think.
You know, again, I'm speaking to members on both sides. On the one hand, Thune himself said, this is going to be difficult. He doesn't see the light yet at the end of the tunnel. Speaker Johnson is blaming the Democrats. The Democrats are blaming the Republicans. More of the same. As I said, it's going to take those 5 individuals: Schumer, Jeffries, Thune, Johnson, and President Trump. Listen, having dealt with President Trump before, I'm a Democrat, but this will not last that long. Donald Trump will bring this thing to an end, and he may have to crack some eggs to get that omelet done. But he's the kind of guy that will do it. So from a business perspective, I'm kind of relying on him to bring this thing to an end. And I couldn't agree more with Russ. I mean, the economic situation is looking pretty good. We're seeing tariffs obviously having an impact, but what we have seen in terms of the tariffs that have been, the deals that have been struck, like the EU deal, that was a boon for the American small business community. So we're hopeful that we can get back to that. You've got USMCA coming around the corner. It's due to start getting renegotiated in 2026. That's with our 2 biggest trade partners, Mexico and Canada. We need to get onto the business of that and stop with the politics here. But at the end of the day, I don't think Donald Trump has 31 days in him. I don't think he has 31 more hours. The reality of it is, I think he will put his foot down and he'll get this thing done.
All right, good to speak with you both. Javier Palomares, Rod Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, police in Montgomery, Alabama are calling for the public's health after a shooting downtown left 2 people dead and a dozen others injured. City leaders are vowing accountability for everyone involved.
We're not going to normalize this. We're going to do whatever we can, not only to arrest those responsible, we're going to do whatever we can to arrest those connected in any way, who knew what may have happened or who knew what could take place. We're not going just to stop with those folks that were pulling the trigger last night. For us, it's a lot deeper than that because the impact is a lot deeper than that.
Police say rival gunmen opened fire just before 11:30 Saturday night near the corner of Bibb and Commerce Streets in the city's downtown entertainment district. 14 people were shot, 7 of them under the age of 20. A 43-year-old woman and a 17-year-old boy were killed. Investigators say the shooting began when someone targeted one of the victims, prompting others in the crowd to draw their own weapons and fire back. Police have appealed to the public for information about the shooting. A $50,000 reward has been offered for information leading to arrests. And it's been over 6 months since Kash Patel took the helm of the FBI. Following his Senate confirmation in February, he pledged to let good cops be cops and to restore trust in the agency. In an interview airing tonight on NTD, Armstrong Williams sat down with Patel to discuss the Bureau's work, including Operation Summer Heat, which led to over 8,600 arrests. Among the many topics, Patel addressed January 6th National Guard authorizations and transparency with Congress, as well as the line between free speech and true threats. Tune in to the Armstrong Williams Show at 8 p.m. Eastern on NTD and Epoch TV. Don't miss it. Next, new developments at Paramount. The media company has acquired the Free Press and installed its founder, Bari Weiss, as the editor-in-chief of CBS News. CEO David Ellison welcomed Weiss to the organization. In a press release, he wrote, quote, "I am confident her entrepreneurial drive and editorial vision will invigorate CBS News." Weiss founded the Free Press in 2021 after resigning from the New York Times in 2020. In her resignation letter, Weiss cited discrimination and a hostile work environment. The journalist also criticized the paper's editorial policies. Weiss wrote at the time, quote, "Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions." In a statement today, Weiss called the new agreement a testament to the vision of Paramount's new leaders. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will no longer recommend the COVID-19 vaccine for general use. The agency says that individuals should consider a range of factors and consult with their doctor before receiving a shot. For the last several years, the CDC recommended virtually all people aged 6 months and older receive a COVID-19 vaccine, including boosters. In May, the Public Health Agency stopped recommending COVID-19 vaccination for healthy children and pregnant women. Last month, the CDC's vaccine advisory panel said data supporting the shot's effectiveness was weak. Members also said they were concerned about side effects, including myocarditis, a form of heart inflammation. Acting CDC Director Jim O'Neill commented on this decision, saying, quote, "Informed consent is back." And this year's Nobel Prize in Medicine goes to 3 scientists whose research revealed how the immune system keeps itself in balance. American researchers Mary Brunkow and Fred Ramsdell, along with Japan's Shimon Sakaguchi, are being honored for breakthroughs that explained peripheral immune tolerance. That's the body's safeguard against attacking its own cells.
The Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet has today decided to award the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine jointly to Mary Brunkow, Fred Ramsdell, and Shimon Sakaguchi for their discoveries concerning peripheral immune tolerance.
Their work laid the foundation for new treatments targeting autoimmune disorders and certain cancers, and could one day make organ transplants more successful. Sakaguchi first identified a key type of immune cell, the so-called regulatory T cell, in the 1990s. Brunkow and Ramsdell later discovered the FOXP3 gene that helps control those cells, linking genetics to immune self-control. The trio will share nearly $1.2 million in prize money. The Nobel Committee says their discoveries reshaped modern immunology and could transform medicine for decades to come. Up ahead, France's government collapses just hours after being formed, deepening the nation's political crisis and sending French markets sharply lower. That and more after this. I'm Stephanie Cox, and this is World Watch. Hundreds of trekkers stranded near the eastern face of Mount Everest have been guided to safety by rescuers. Chinese state media reported that they had been trapped after heavy snow and rainfall hit the Himalayas. Snow began Friday evening and persisted through Saturday. According to the report, 350 climbers had reached a small town. Hundreds of visitors were in the remote valley of Karma, which leads to the eastern face of Everest. Many had been taking advantage of an 8-day National Day holiday in China. The valley sits at an elevation averaging more than 13,000 feet. Rescuers were in contact with the remaining 200 and were assisting them. And the death toll from the collapse of that boarding school in Indonesia has risen to at least 65, with rescuers still searching for more than a dozen missing students. Hundreds of teenage boys were gathered for prayers at the Al-Konizini Islamic boarding school in East Java when the building suddenly caved in last week. Officials say it's Indonesia's deadliest disaster this year as crews continue clearing debris and recovering victims from the rubble. Authorities believe construction work on upper floors caused the foundations to give way, bringing down tons of concrete. The school is one of tens of thousands of Islamic boarding schools across Indonesia, many of which operate without official building permits. Venezuela is warning the United States of a possible attack on the American embassy in Caracas. Venezuela's National Assembly president claims the political right in Venezuela is planning a false flag operation. But Venezuela's socialist regime often blames local right-wing groups. After last year's presidential election, Venezuelans protested on the streets. They didn't believe that incumbent Nicolas Maduro had won the election. The socialist leader then dismissed the protesters as right-wing extremists. After investigations, the United States came to the conclusion that Maduro did indeed steal the election. And the European Commission president is facing calls to remove her from this for the second time in 3 months. A 2/3 majority of votes would be required to unseat Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The motions are set to be proposed today by National Rally and France Unbowed. National Rally has criticized what it calls misguided climate policies and a failure to address illegal immigration. France Unbowed has largely objected to what it calls inaction over the war in Gaza. Both parties say that von der Leyen accepted an unfair trade deal with the United States. France is in political turmoil. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu and his government resigned today, just hours after announcing a new cabinet. That makes it the shortest-lived government in modern French history, sending stocks and the euro sharply lower. Here are the details.
France's new Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, resigned on Monday, barely 14 hours after appointing his new cabinet. His swift resignation was unexpected and unprecedented and marked another major deepening of France's political crisis.
La composition du gouvernement au sein du socle commun.
The composition of the government was not smooth and awakened some partisan appetites, sometimes quite legitimately linked to the upcoming presidential election.
La future élection présidentielle.
The National Rally immediately urged President Emmanuel Macron to call a snap parliamentary election. After weeks of consultations with political parties across the board, Lecornu, a close ally of Macron, had appointed his ministers on Sunday. But the new cabinet lineup had angered opponents and allies alike. They either found it too right-wing or not sufficiently so, raising questions on how long it could last. The resignation hit French stocks in early trade. Paris's CAC 40 dropped 2%, making it the worst-performing index in Europe. Banking shares came under heavy fire, leaving BNP Paribas, Société Générale and Crédit Agricole down 4 to 5%. The euro also slid 0.7% on the news. Lecornu's resignation comes at a time when France is already mired deep in political crisis, with no group holding a majority in a fragmented parliament.
Japan's ruling party has elected a China hawk and staunch conservative as its next leader, which likely makes her the nation's next prime minister. Japanese stocks surged to an all-time high today following the weekend election. Here's more.
Japanese stocks soared Monday after Sanai Takeichi came out on top to lead Japan's ruling party. That makes her set to become the country's first female prime minister, subject to confirmation by lawmakers. The Nikkei surged close to 5% to hit a new record high. It passed the 48,000 mark for the first time, as analysts broadly welcomed her commitment to economic stimulus. Defense contractor Mitsubishi Heavy Industries was among the top movers, jumping around 11% as more military spending is expected under Takaichi. Tech stocks also surged, with chip gear maker Advantest jumping 14%. The veteran lawmaker won Saturday's runoff vote in the Liberal Democratic Party race. Upon victory, Takaichi made clear her priority would be to revive demand and the broader market. Known to be an advocate of big fiscal spending, she is a devotee of the stimulus policies developed by her late predecessor Shinzo Abe. Takaichi has called for tax cuts to cushion the rising cost of living, and she's criticized the Bank of Japan's decision to raise interest rates, dimming bets rates will be hiked at its meeting at the end of October. That saw the yen sink, trading at 150 yen against the dollar. Longer-term Japanese government bonds also fell on the expectations Takaichi will push for more spending.
Takaichi is an admirer of former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and a protege of the late Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated in 2022. Her win is expected to reassure her party's nationalist base, but may complicate diplomacy with China and South Korea. China's foreign ministry reacted cautiously, calling the outcome, quote, Japan's internal affair.